Still talking about the off-cycle elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission yesterday has, of course, done a lot of declarations. They did declare the candidate of the People Democratic Party, Duoye Diri, the winner of the Bayelsa governorship election. According to the state, returning officer Professor Faruq Kuta, who is also the incumbent governor of the state, polled a total vote of 175,196 to clinch the governorship position against the All Progressives Congress ABC candidate Timipre Sylva, who polled 110,108 votes, making the margin a total of 65,088 votes.
Well, let's also remind you that INEC had adjourned the collation of results of 2 out of the 8 local government areas in Bayelsa, following the updates that elections were not conducted on Saturday in some polling units in these local governments, adding that its officials needed additional time to gather and compile the results of these LGAs. Well, the other 8 local government LGAs are Bras, Southern Ijaw, Kolokuma, Opokuma, Ogbia, Yenegoa, Sagbama, Yenegoa, and of course Ekeremor. Now, Diri won 6 of the LGAs, while Sylva won only 2 LGAs. But one man has been there. He's been following the situation non-stop. He's definitely our man, our eyes, our ears, and of course, you could say our nose as well. His name is Bernard Akede. Bernard, good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning all the way from Bayelsa.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right, so you want to give us an update. First off, the announcement has been made. The newspapers are indeed agog with the stories. Everyone is indeed celebrating, well, in some parts. But what's the look and feel where you are, especially from Bayelsa?
Well, I think we can finally say it's the morning after, and I'll be honest to you, life has continued as usual. Towards the end of yesterday, there was a lot of celebration, of course, by supporters of the incumbent and the new governor, and streets were agog with noise making in certain parts, like you did say. Here in Yenegoa, the state capital, there was a lot of celebration and jubilation. But of course, in certain local governments, particularly places like Bras, I want to believe that the people there were not exactly happy with what they heard. If you remember, during the collation, when the results were announced, the representative of the All Progressives Congress, which is the opposition party, APC, said that he and his party were going to reject the results and that he would not sign the final result sheet. So it's expected that supporters of that party would not be happy. But life, as we know it in Yenegoa, well, for the past few days, has continued as usual. Children have resumed schools. They resumed yesterday, actually. And, workers have also gone back to work. So I want to believe that the people who support the party will still be in celebratory mood for a while, and then eventually it will be time for the governor to commence work all over again.
All right, have we heard from Governor Duoye Diri, what is he saying? And let's talk also about the security situation in the state. In some parts of the states that had the off-cycle elections, there were concerns about insecurity. Was that something that Bayelsa State, a concern that Bayelsa State also experienced?
Well, yes, in certain locations, certain local governments of Bayelsa State, there were pockets of insecurity, if I do put it that way. And of course, like the DIG who was posted to Bayelsa State did mention on Thursday before the election, he said that Bayelsa is one of the states that has a history of electoral violence in some places. And so because of that, they deployed a heavy number of security operatives. Again, the total number, according to him, was 27,000 police officers deployed to the state, without counting support from other security, sister security operatives. So yes, there were places where security was heavy. Places like Nimbe, places like Bras. We had a team in Bras, and they said, in fact, it did look like there were more uniformed security personnel in there than they were electorate themselves. So yes, also, as I mentioned, there were pockets of insecurity. I spoke to some core members who said that they were harassed a little bit in some places for resuming late, which was no fault of theirs. There was also a cab driver who picked us yesterday, and he was saying that in certain communities, they were fearing for their lives because they weren't sure what would happen because, of course, of the history that those places have had. Also, it was this kind of conversation that sparked up the fight we saw at the Collation Center yesterday, where the one party agent claimed, without any evidence anyway, but claimed that there were intimidations and there were threats to him and some of his party officials. And in trying to, to debunk his statements, he and one other party official got into a fist row, which eventually the police were able to sort out yesterday at the Collation Center, and then Collation went on 1-hour recess. But anyway, pockets of insecurity, nothing too too heavy that the security operatives deployed to the state couldn't address eventually.
Questions to also relate to you. One of them is, what would you say people are talking about concerning the security that was put in place for the off-cycle elections, especially in Bayelsa? Are people saying it was very effective? That's one. And two, still outside of the off-cycle elections, are there any whispers of strike, people joining the NLC-TUC strike there in Bayelsa?
I'll start with the later question. Well, Bayelsa is actually a quiet and peaceful state, and particularly Yenegoa, the capital, very peaceful. I haven't heard so much about the NLC strike here in Bayelsa, to be honest. People are going about their daily business, as I mentioned. In fact, schools, so I'll tell you something I just got to understand. Now, Bayelsa is one of the states that has been affected by flooding around this time of the year for a couple of years now. And because of that, they have what they call flood break for schools. They go on break for 6 weeks during that flooding period. And they only resume from yesterday on Monday. So nobody is talking about the strike affecting the resumption of schools. And it also doesn't seem like it's affecting anything just here. But if things get heated, maybe they eventually would also take part. But for now, nobody's talking about it. Talking about security, of course, like our head of news, Usana Ononya, did say yesterday while he was on the show, he said, look, elections will always bring out two parties. There will be those who will be satisfied, of course, the winners, and there will be those who will be unsatisfied, the losers, so to speak. So it's the losers or those who eventually did not win that will be the ones to probably complain about most things that went wrong. They will see the wrong in almost everything, while the winners will begin to see some of the rights in things like conduction of the election and security. So, of course, there will be those who would complain about security presence. But to the best of my knowledge, well, it wasn't anything that was too out of hand.
Have we heard anything yet from the other contenders, from Timipre Sylva, for example, who fought tooth and nail to be able to secure his position here at the elections? So do we have any words from him? How are the reactions from political figures?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, apart from the party representative from Timipre Sylva's camp, who threw a fit yesterday when the results were announced, we haven't had any official statement just yet from that camp. It was clear immediately the figures were read out. In fact, while the figures were being read out, he had started to complain about certain things that the INEC rec was debunking as they came. And then when the eventual figures were read out, it was when he said that he and his party would disregard those figures. They do not accept the figures. And then when the result sheet was brought up and all the party representatives were called to sign, he stated that he would not be signing that result sheet eventually. Besides that, we haven't heard much from him or from his principal or from the party entirely, but I expect that we would hear something from them. And I also expect, like we've seen several times, or rather I would not be surprised if we hear that this would also go to court, like we've seen in several past cases.
Can you also share with us about the fight? On the final note, we heard there was a fight at the Collation Center yesterday.
Yeah, I was hoping you would not ask that, but yes. Anyway, so as I did mention, a party official stood up and was talking about some of the ills of the election. He was vehemently speaking with them. It was almost like it was raining fire and brimstone from his mouth when he was talking about certain things that went wrong. And then he got to the part where he said in certain places that some of his party officials or some of his followers or the followers of his party were intimidated, were threatened, their lives were threatened, and that some were even harassed. And I think it was with the force at which he was saying this that other people rose up and tried to shut him up and shut him down. I'm saying these claims and accusations were false without any evidence. And then in between there, the representative of the All Progressives Congress now got a bit physical with him. And that was when we saw the famous punch. It was quite a vicious punch, I must acknowledge. Punch to the face of the All Progressives Congress party. The police had to come in to separate this fight. And then the sitting went on 1 hour's recess before we reconvened to start counting the ballot, to start collating results for the last local government that was there. But of course, it was something that was not expected and something that should completely be discouraged. Elections will always have winners and losers, unfortunately. It's taking it in good faith that's most important, to be honest, and ensuring that the electoral umpire handle things the way they should be handled. We do hope that it doesn't go beyond what happened yesterday anyway.
I said the good side or the good news of that is at least we saw the police step in to separate the fight, unlike in Imo State where the police was just watching whilst the chairman of the Labour Party was being brutalized and dragged away. It's an unfortunate situation, but yes.
It's a lot.
Bayelsa does look like good news so far. In all the states that we've been speaking about the elections, Bayelsa does look like good news where the elections, went free and fair. And we're glad that you're safe and every other person's safe there. Thank you so much, Bernard, for bringing us the updates in Bayelsa. And we look forward to seeing you back here in Lagos.
Thank you for having me.